So I just wanted to start with welcoming every one of you for this second version of Virtual Career Fair. I hope everyone is doing well right now because I understand that 2020 has been very tough for all of us, not just me, not just for the employers, for all of either the candidates too. But the good news is that the market is reopening and recovery is in progress in 2021 actually. So it's very exciting that it's coming to happen. And as your career partner, JobStreet, we are here to help you the most of this opportunity. So we have come up with 3 days of this event to provide you with opportunities to interact live with a wide range of companies. So if you happen to visit our booth over there, you can see or you can even participate and apply for jobs, a wide range of jobs that you're looking for online. And if you're lucky enough, you can be even invited with one-to-one virtual career interviews. And not only that, we understand that you might be thinking that if you apply, am I qualified? Is my resume is enough to submit to the employers? Nothing to worry. If you think that you're in doubt, rather, we are actually collaborated with Future Learn, and they offer free certified courses. And these courses are spread across digital marketing, robotics, cybersecurity, finance, HR, and many more. So you can always visit the website, click on level up your career, and you'll be able to see further information about the courses that they are offering. All right. And for any of you that need career advices, because you might be not so confident about yourself, right? This is what you're going to do right now. We are actually joined today by Ari. Hi, Ari, if you can hear me. Can you say hi?
Hi.
Hi there. Okay, so Ari is our JobStreet's career advisor, and she will be sharing with us about a very interesting topic, like how do you want to get interested, and how does yourself to be interesting to the employers as well. So I believe Ari will be sharing us that in this moment. So Ari, without further ado, I'll pass the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Jay, and a very good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this live stream. So what I'm going to do right now is to share my screen. So I'm going to ask Jay, could you just let me have control of the screen? Thank you very much. All right, I hope that you're just as excited as I am, sharing a little about this topic that I also hold close to my heart. So let me get it going. All right. So I hope you can see my screen right now. So it's really about this topic about how to be interested and be interesting in a virtual interview. So at this point, if you've made it to the interview, then it's congratulations to you, because that's, there's something about your resume, something about you that the interviewer would like to find out more about. So before we get started, I'm going to ask you a question. All right. So imagine that you were going to go fishing and you wanted to attract the fishes. So what would you use to attract the fish? Would it be A, your pineapple tarts that you had from Chinese New Year, because the Chinese New Year just ended recently and you had tons left over, and it's also your favorite, right? So would you use this to attract the fishes? Or would you use B, you use a fat, juicy worm to attract the fishes? So which would it be, A or B? So I'm sure most of you are probably thinking B, because, we've always heard that, to kind of bait fishes or attract fishes, we use worms. But if you think about it as well, does worms actually exist in the ocean or the sea? It doesn't, right? So different fishes actually attracted by different things. I once came across a fish that was actually really attracted to eggs, and you don't find those underwater as well. So if we put that in the context of our interviews, and today we're especially talking about virtual interviews, is this quote that, that informs the title of today's live stream is from Dale Carnegie. And he says that to be interesting, we have to be first interested in the other party. So in this case, the question that we want to ask ourselves is, from the hiring manager's perspective, or the person that's going to be interviewing you, what would be interesting, or what would they be interested in? So that's where I like to, bring you the first idea. And that's really the idea that, you know, it's going to be center of what we're going to be speaking about in our live stream today is about fit. And I'm sure all of us know, you know, fit. When we buy clothes, we want to find a clothes that fit us, right? So similarly as well, you know, and I've also kind of tuned into the other hiring managers that were talking in JobStreet's live stream the past 2 days. They also talk about this idea of fit. So what does fit mean? So firstly, when we talk about fit, it's always about the job fit, right? Do you have the skills? Do you have the experience in relation to the job that they are looking for? So that's really job fit. And you can actually glean this from the job description, you know, or what you know about the industry. But I know that there are some candidates and some job seekers, and some of them that I've worked with in the past as well when I coach them. They always tell me and they say, Ari, you know what? I have the perfect match for the skill sets. You know, in fact, I probably over exceeded some of those skills that or experiences they have there. But why am I still not being considered for the position? Well, of course, there are many other reasons, all right? Those that may be beyond your control. They might have other candidates that are a better fit. But one other important consideration is what we call the cultural fit as well. So cultural fit is really kind of like the secret sauce behind the fit of the candidate. You know, it's how the organization, the company makes decision, their personality, what are the things that they value. And likewise, at a team level as well, this is also fit, right? Because we are talking about the team itself has an existing way that they interact, they make decisions. So putting a new element into that team also kind of affects the culture of the team. So that's why it's also important that we need to consider whether are we a fit to the culture of the organization and the team. Now, in fact, you know, one of the hiring managers I spoke to previously also shared with me, you know, and says that, you know, they're very willing to take on people who are career switchers or even people who are actually applying for a job that, you know, they have way exceeded the experience. But one of their top concerns, you know, when they interview the candidate is, will the candidate then, you know, when they join the team, will they then bring their, you know, if let's say they were a director previously and they were applying for a executive or managerial role to take a step back, would they, you know, kind of influence the team and says that, hey, you know what, you know, I was a previous director, I should know better. So these are some of the concerns that actually comes at the back of the hiring manager's mind when they're interviewing you. So with this in mind, we talk about fit, we talk about being interested and interesting. So our focus today, we're going to talk about in these 3 areas. Right? The first, of course, is talking about how do we prepare for interview? How do we show that we're interested, or how do we be interesting? We also talk about how we show our fit during the interview. I'm going to spend a bit of time, a little bit into the virtual interview context as well, but of course, these are also very applicable if you're doing face-to-face interviews. And lastly, what do you do after the interview? Are you ready? Let's get started. So preparing for the interview, all right, we're going to look for it from 2 perspectives. All right, so the first one is from the company, because we want to be interested in the company. So if let's say you've got an interview, you really want to make sure that you've done your research before going for the interview. You want to find out and answer this question: what does the company need? All right, what is the kind of problems, the challenges that they have? What are they looking for? So to help you inform this decision, really, you're going to be looking at perhaps information you already have. You probably use the job description to kind of craft your resume. So it's a good time to actually pull out that job description. All right, that's why it's always a good practice that if you were to apply for a job, always save that job description, because, you know, maybe later down the road, you might not realize that the job description has disappeared. So always take a hold of that copy. And you also want to find out more about the company. You know, you go into their website, you kind of find out, you know, what are the latest news that they have, what excites the company in terms of their mission and their values as well, because this is going to be very important when you want to sound interesting to the company. And another aspect that you want to be able to research on, if you possibly could, was to try to network and meet people in the industry. even better if it's within that company itself. Of course, at this stage, if you're going for an interview already, then knowing these people might also be a good idea if you could, all right? Because they will also give you insights to perhaps what may not be published out there, or it may be inform you of certain challenges that perhaps the company has not is currently dealing with right now. So that's from the perspective of researching the company to really be interested in really what makes them tick. On the other aspect, it's also to be interesting. It's about you, all right? Because you are the one that's marketing yourself. And in the interview, you don't probably may not have the piece of paper, but of course on virtual, you probably could have that on standby. But it really boils down to, are you interesting enough? Do you know your brand? And the question that you want to answer in this aspect here is, how do you fit into the company's brand and the company's challenges that we talked about earlier? Now, in fact, most of you, I'm sure, are really good at doing research because of Google, and we are in the stage where we have done so much research and have time on our hands to do that. But what a lot of hiring managers find is that, you're telling me all this information, but how does it relate to me as the brand, right? So some of the aspects that you can connect yourself to the company's, job description, what they're looking for, the fit, right? Is the things that we talked about actually yesterday. If you missed that episode, you might want to catch up on that. It's called What's My Career Story? So you want to identify what are some of the values that you have that aligns with the organization, right? If let's say you're applying to an organization that values a fast-moving pace, they value creativity. So you want to make sure that your values also align to that, right? Also, your interests is what the company is doing of interest to you, right? Likewise, your personality as well. Just as you have a personality, even companies have personalities as well, right? Some companies, they come across as very vibrant. Some companies are a little bit more serious, right? So they also have personalities. So how do you align with that? And also, we all know the drill about skills and experience. In this case here, we need to be very clear how our skills and our experience then fit into the brand. All right. And for some of you who are maybe doing your career switch, you might not have that much experience, but you want to try to relate maybe work experience or experiences that maybe you did on a project or on a personal basis that could then relate to the company, that what they're looking for as well. All right, so these are some of the things that you want to kind of take a look at, maybe the job description, really go through it and pick out some of the ideas of the values of the skill set or the experience that really aligns to the job that you're looking for. I know it may sound like quite a bit of work, but this is the part that if you plan it right as well, it'll take a load off your mind, especially when you're already going for the interview. So it's really knowing yourself and knowing what the company is looking for. All right, so we talk about also being interesting because this being the topic of virtual interviews, we want to make sure that we're also set up right so that we can be the most interesting thing in this video towel that we have right here and not something perhaps in the background or a cat that's walking there, right? So the first of all, when it comes to virtual interview, we want to make sure that we're familiar with platforms. Now, we've been on the virtual platform for most of us probably in the past 1 year or plus. So there's quite a number of common platforms that we use. So we want to make sure we're familiarized with that. The second is location, where we are. All right, so are we in a location that we are the most interesting thing in that picture there? All right, so sometimes not all virtual platforms, not all platforms would actually have a virtual background, for example. So you want to be prepared for that just in case. And also we talk about lighting and webcam, right? Placing it at a area that you could see them directly and they could see you, and also having enough lighting or maybe too much of it as well. All right, so you want to make sure that you have sufficient, and these are some things that you can test beforehand. And if you find out what platform you're using. All right, and we also talk about bandwidth, because the last thing you want to see on the screen is probably something that, if your bandwidth is not strong enough, you might be just stuck as a picture down there. So you want to try to avoid all this so that the focus is on view during the interview. So once we've got that set up, we're kind of almost ready to go into the interview, and this is on the day itself. All right, so maybe just prior preparing for it, we want to make sure that we're interested. And how do we do that is, of course, these are some of the etiquette, the basic etiquette. So if you haven't gone for an interview in the past 10, 20 over years, you want to make sure that these are still the etiquettes that are still in place. So one of the things is to dress appropriately. All right, and of course, in a virtual environment, you probably only see this upper half. But you might want to consider, if let's say you're using a virtual background, make sure what you're wearing doesn't blend so nicely with the background. Otherwise, what they see would be a floating head. All right. The second thing you want to do is arrive in good time. Because unlike a face-to-face interview, where you could be there, like 10, 15 minutes earlier, and you could wait for them to come in the virtual interview, sometimes some of them have a waiting room. So you might want to be there perhaps 5 minutes earlier at least, to just kind of make sure that your tech setup is doing okay and you're cool, calm, and collected, so that by the time you're admitted into the interview room, you're ready to go. All right, the third is also about positive body language. And it's also a little bit of a challenge, because now this time your body language is just going to be focused on the upper part of your body. But you want to make sure as well that you'll come across as confident and really excited about the job. Sure, you may be nervous and you might be like a swan on the outside paddling nicely, but below you're frantically paddling. But that's the beauty of the virtual interviews as well. Really this part is going to be very important. So make sure you have good eye contact. And at the end of the day, it's not really sometimes what you say, but really how you say it is also just as important. All right, and come prepared. So what do I mean by prepared? All right, because we've already done our research in the first part in preparation for interview. So we want to become prepared because there are certain things that has not changed, whether it being a virtual or face-to-face interview. And that are common questions, right? These are the questions that interviewers ask, because after all, an interview is really a conversation, a two-way conversation. It's not a monologue, all right? So to be interesting, we want to prepare for certain kind of questions that might come up. But the interesting thing is this as well, because if you think about how many common questions, even when I ask people in my HR community as well, what kind of questions you ask, you'll find that there's so many. There's probably about 100 over common interview questions. So not so common after all, right? So the question is this, can you prepare for all those 100 over interview questions? Well, that's not possible as well, because then it will come across as, one is, unless you have a memory of an elephant, but otherwise than that, it's really about focusing on the conversation rather than memorizing your answers. So I'd like to break it down for you into maybe 5 general areas or 5 types of questions that would probably be asked. And the first one is about, tell me more about yourself. So this is an expected question. We probably want to prepare for that. Interviewers ask this for various reasons. Most of the time it's kind of like an icebreaker, but it's also a question that they want to ask so that they know, what are you about? The mistake that a lot of job seekers do is that, they prepare an elevator speech, but it's got maybe not so much relation to the job that they're applying for. So again, when you're preparing this part of the question, always think back about perhaps what you did in the past, what you're currently doing in the present that relates to the job, and what do you hope to contribute as well as part of this job. All right, so that's really this tell me about yourself question. So the second question, type of question that I commonly see and I commonly hear about as well is about a job fit question. All right, so remember, we talk about fit. We talk about 2 aspects, right? The job fit. And this is one that they want to find out from you. Questions like, what interests you about the role? What motivated you to apply for the role? So it's really about, can you then relate your experience, your skills to the job that you're applying for? The third question relates to a culture fit question, right? Why do you want to work here? So they want to know whether you're a good fit in terms of the organization, not just the job. So you want to prepare, do you know the culture of the company? Could you tell them a bit more about, what motivated you, that excited you about the company? So that's also another question that you want to prepare for. And the fourth question, I'm sure that you might have come across this as well, is called tell me of a time. So these are what we call behavioral questions, and they generally fall into 5 categories. For example, they generally talk about, tell me about your teamwork, right? Tell me about, how you took an initiative. The third one, they probably ask you about your problem solving skills. And we heard that a lot from the past 2 speakers as well. We talk about your adaptability to handle problems. All right, and the fourth aspect, we talk about your interpersonal skills. How well do you relate to others? And the fifth, they talk about how do you face challenges and stress. So you want to make sure perhaps you prepare a story, and storytelling is going to be so key in this particular part of it, because you want to tell them a story that resonates with them, that may be even better if it aligns to some of the work that they do. So one of the ways to do that is to use the car technique. All right. So you want to drive home the point that you that you have the behaviors that you could demonstrate in that job. So let me break it down for you. All right. The car technique is simply these 3 things. It's a complete storytelling line for you. So set the context. All right. So how did this situation appear, or what the task that you were given in the past? All right. Tell them about the actions. Not just, what was done, but really what is it that you did in terms of your skills, your knowledge, your attitude. These are things that they want to know. And this is the part for you to really shine. And like any good story as well, you want to make sure you close the conclusion. What was the result of that story? So state the impact right there. So these are some of the tips that you could do to talk about, tell me about a time, these behavioral questions. All right, and the 5th question that's commonly asked as well is this one over here. Do you have any questions for me? So this one here by this stage, this is usually asked towards the end of the interview questions. And some candidates that I work with, they tell me, oh, I don't know what to ask, or I've already asked it. Do you know why interviewers ask this question? It's because they want to know that you're interested. Are you interested in this job? Or are you just, applying to this job because, there was no other jobs that were out there? They want to be special as well. So what could you ask? So a couple of things you could ask is, 1, how are you doing? Okay, this gives you kind of like a bit of a feedback as well, because a lot of job seekers don't get feedback from their interview. They just, when 2 weeks after the interview, they don't get any knowledge. This is also a good point that you can find out a little bit about how your interview went so far. The second you could ask about is your role. Is there something about the role that you haven't found out yet? All right. So this is why the research part is so important. The second thing or third thing that you could actually ask more about is the company, right? Especially if you're maybe meeting a senior management, if that's the stage of your interview, you could ask them a little bit more about the direction or the plans of the company. So at least you also know where they're heading towards. And this is the part that's not normally, that you cannot just probably find it off the job description. It's really about the culture. So this is a great opportunity for you to find out more about the culture, the personality of the organization. So make sure you ask about this as well. And the last thing, you do want to make sure that you ask about perhaps the manager that you're working with, because after all, people join because of companies, but people leave because of managers. So could you find out more about the manager that you'll be working with? If you get a chance to be asking this question to the manager as well, this is an opportunity for you to find out more about, what they see as success in this particular role. What do they expect out of the candidate? All right, so these are the 5 areas that you could definitely ask questions about. And by this stage over here, before you end off the interview, this is where at the stage, this is where we come to the end of the interview. So now is the waiting period. You're kind of waiting to kind of find out what's going to happen next. But there's still things that you can do to be interesting and to be interested as well. So 3 things, all right, that you should always do after your interviews. So first of all, to be interested, you always want to make sure you express appreciation, because while they may have seen many candidates and the experience has passed, but sometimes what you have written down stays on with people for a long time because that's something tangible that they can refer to. So always express appreciation for the time that the hiring manager has actually offered you. The second part, if you could, to be interested, is to stay connected as well. There are social media platforms that you can connect with. And maybe in the next round, when you do end up working in the organization, this is a great way for you to then further build your network, right? We talked about how important a network is yesterday. And finally, to be interesting, we always want to really assess our interview as well. You know, think back about immediately after the interview, jot down some notes that were interesting to you, and maybe also assess how did you do in the interview, so that maybe the next time when you have another interview, the second round or another interview, then you know what you could do to be more interesting. All right, so in summary, I know this is a very quick overview because we're going to Q&A in a moment. It's really about showing that you are interested and you are interesting. It is always about the fit. All right, with that, I'm going to I'm going to now go on to Q&A in a while. I'm going to introduce my panelists as well. So those of them who's going to join me is, maybe I'll tell you a very quick story about them. So the first panelist that will be joining me is Winston. Winston is an executive career coach with QDA Asia, and he has coached many individuals both in private and public institutions. So he is very for transformation coaching. And joining me as well is also Gerald. Gerald, right now, you know, is a project director with Avoda People Solutions, and he's got some insights as well because he was a previous hiring manager too. So at this point in time, I'd like to I'm going to stop my screen share, and I'm going to get my panelists to join me on screen. So, we're all on screen now. Thank you very much. Hi, Gerald, Winston.
Hello.
That's nice.
Hi, everyone.
All right, so let's tackle the questions because we have about 10 minutes or so. So let's go into the first question that was asked by Shama. So let me direct this question to Winston. So Winston, Shama asks, does work experience always matter in getting a good job? All right, is it true that a person, if that's the experience, is actually one of the most important criteria? So would you like to take that question?
Right. Thank you very much for your question, Shama. So generally, I will want to say this. Experience basically showcase yourself, right? But then again, a lot of times people don't know how to use their experience to showcase them during the time when they are sharing during interview, right? For example, I come across a lot of people who keep telling me, hey, Winston, I have a lot of experience. Okay, tell me about experience. You know, being an administrator, I just do those kind of stuff, 7 years of experience. So yeah, so what kind of stuff? So being over here, when you talk about experience, you need to be very clear. What exactly have you done and what have you achieved? So having said this, that will give you some mileage in terms of landing into a job. So how do you quantify good job? That's for you to quantify it, right? So for a fresh grad, generally they have something else. They have other selling points. For example, like they have the latest knowledge of they have the knowledge of the latest trend, what is out there in the marketplace, and this is how they actually want to market themselves to the employer. And I hope that actually answers your questions. Yeah.
All
And
right, thank you
thank
very
you.
much, Winston, for sharing your thought about that. All right, now I'm going to kind of focus a little bit on the interview questions as well. And there's another one that Gerald, I think this one you would probably be interested to take up this question. So this person, Serena, she says that she's a secretary. So how do you think she could go about to show that she's interesting in an interview? What are your thoughts, Daryl?
Thanks, Ari, for highlighting that question. So, Serena, being a secretary, how can you go about showing how interesting you are in a future interview, right? There's many ways to look into this, right? One of it is your own personality, right? And that's the easier one. So, of course, bringing your best self, whatever Ari was saying earlier, being positive, being cheerful, being energetic at interviews. That's something that's really important because sometimes it's not what you say, but how you say that kind of leaves an impression on people, right? So that's one, and that's something to take note of, especially over virtual platform, because virtual platform you do have the personal touch, so you got to kind of up your energy a little bit. So if you realize I've not been talking with my hands up, but if I start to gesture something like this and you understand what I'm talking about now, can you sense the energy that I'm having, right? So simple things like this will help you to put across your personality. So that's one, the personality. The second thing, is to really look back at your own career, the things that you did as a secretary. What were some of the important things that are relevant to the job that you're applying for? Right. So this question itself, what I can advise you to do is perhaps you can script out, write out a piece of paper as you prepare for the interview. What are some 2 or 3 of the important things that you did in your role as a secretary that is relevant for the next role, and create, using what Ari mentioned earlier, the CAR, looking at the situation, right? And then after that, what was the action taken and what was the results? So you craft it into a story, telling someone that, you have done this project before. This project was started because there was a need for it, and then after that, what was the action that you took? What was your role that you played? What did you do? And finally, how excited you were to actually see the results, and what changes the results actually created. So when you have a couple of these stories in your bucket for interview, right? And then it's just about listening in to find out when is the appropriate time to share this story with the people that are interviewing you. I'm sure that a secretary has got a lot of very interesting things, right? So just be mindful. Don't share anything confidential. Just be general about the sensitive and the specifics. But tell people, more importantly, tell the employer what is so relevant about your experience. It's not just about interesting, but also must be relevant. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you very much, Cheryl, for sharing that. Yeah, so it's not so much about interesting. I mean, interesting could be, it's very subjective to anything, but people always want to find how does it relate to me, right? So it's always about the fit. So thanks, Cheryl, for sharing that. And also, I think I'm going to take a question that was asked by an anonymous attendee. Is it necessary to send thank you emails after an interview? I think I covered that already. It's absolutely necessary because remember, the experience is probably during the interview time, but what stays on after is what they can remember of you. And some of it you can help them by being a tangible thank you email or thank you letter. All right. And even then, it's really just proper etiquette that they took the time to actually speak to you. So this is where you appreciate them as well. After all, hiring managers are human beings. So we do want to kind of remember that too. Okay. So I've got probably about a couple more minutes, and there was a question. I think this one kind of covers probably the theme of what everybody's trying to ask about. So maybe I'm going to ask Winston and Gerald, perhaps get your thought about this, all right? Ultimately, in the interview, somebody asked, what would make an interviewee be a good impression? What would be one thing that would really strike them as a good impression from an interviewee? Okay, so you got that thought about it? Winston, I saw you unmuted, so go ahead. Would you like to share your thoughts?
Right. Thank you very much, Ari. Gerald, if you don't mind, I go first. Right. So one of the things I think a person need to be sincere and be authentic. And most important thing of all, please prepare yourself. What happened is that I do have experience whereby some people come for an interview and they are not prepared at all. Oh, so what position am I applying for? Oh, yeah, this position. Please don't do that. right? You will just throw me off. Of course, some of y'all will say that, well, that wouldn't happen to me. But most important thing of all, just get yourself prepared. So when they ask you certain questions, you are able to answer it. And if you are unable to answer it, or if you don't know, just share with them, I'm so sorry, I'm not clear about this. Or perhaps you can just fill me in with it. Don't try to blow your way through, right? Yeah. So Gerald, what's your thoughts? What are your thoughts in fact?
Yeah. You know, I'm just recalling all the interview stories that I've had in the past, trying to find something that really stood out. And this is a really good question, you know. Um, so I have a couple to share, right? The first story that I had was we were actually hiring for someone to do data work, right? Data analytics work. And this lady, she came in, I remember, she came in and she was really good, meaning that everything that we wanted to look for, she had it. Uh, when we asked her about certain tasks or certain things that she had done, she said, I used to do this, I used to do that. Everything was perfect. It was super good. And she was the right fit. She had the right personality, and we were so happy. We were so happy to have finally found that person. So when I think back about what made this person really stood out was number one, everything we asked for, everything that we said wondered whether she could do or not. She had some answer for it, and she could have some tangible experience. She could share a story, a little story, or a little snippet of an experience that she had done that gave us confidence to know that she was a good fit, right? So that's one. Another person that kind of also stood up for me was, and this was something very unorthodox. It's not quite common, but we ended up hiring her anyway. This lady came in and she was going through an interview. She had a file in front of her. She had a file in front of her, and I know that she had a resume. She had her resume out on the first page. It was very interesting because, you know, usually interview tables you don't put anything on the table, but this lady had her file up there. And as she was talking and as we were asking questions, I could see that she was looking at the file from time to time, right? And that's where I got very curious as to why she was doing that. And then I realized after a while she was doing that because she's a very meticulous and conventional person, meaning that she needed to record and she wanted to be very precise on what she said. And the role was for somebody to do exactly that, to be very precise. So in that case, she actually demonstrated whether it was the right thing or wrong thing. It's very uncommon, I must say. It was very uncommon. I know a lot of you won't do this as well, but just because that role kind of fit in with how she behaved, right? It left us a firm impression, and it made me feel like I can trust her because she was able to like record down and write down what we were actually talking about. So that was exactly what we were looking for. So that's one. Yeah. So I think these two people really, I hope I showed you guys one that is more typical, able to showcase your value and what you have done from your work experiences, and another which is really something very different, but yet it could still work out, right? Especially if it's something that's relevant to the job. Of course, she also had the relevant experiences and a great personality as well to be able to fit in with the team.
Thank you very much, Gerald. That's a really interesting story. And sometimes, this goes to also show, all the job seekers who are watching this live stream that there are different interviewers as well. Different interviewers will pick up on different things too. So, sometimes it's really about, putting your best self out there because you really don't know sometimes really something that you've done just clicks with the interviewer too. All right, so we're coming to the tip of, we're just probably going to spend one more question, I think, before we move on, because our coaches do have to go to their sessions here. And I thought this is a very interesting question too. So I'm going to ask again, probably Gerald and Winston, just very briefly, right? One attendee asked, how do we ensure that we're not asking the question too short or too long-winded? Interesting one, huh? So, I'm very interested to kind of hear what are your thoughts about that? How do we ensure that, how does the job seeker know that they're answering it too long or too short? What are your thoughts? So maybe we'll start off first with Winston.
Sure, certainly. Good question. When do you know, is it too long or too short? So I think the important point is not only just too long or too short. Are you answering to the question, right? I always tell people that you need to listen to the question and listen to the questioner, not just the questioner. Because most of the time, the questioner asks a question to find an answer. So if you are just answering to the question, so you might miss the questioner, and the questioner will have more questions, and that's where you just, oh gosh, they're asking me more questions. Then you might give a short question. So please listen to the questioner's question so that you can answer to the question, right? A rough guide, generally I would say, um, not more than about 1 to 2 minutes, right? Just a rough guide. But there again, my I will be more of thinking of whether are you answering to the question or not. That is the most essential point. Yeah,
Thank you
Gerald.
very much, Winston, for that. Actually, yeah,
Yeah,
Gerald, go ahead, give it
I
a
agree. I
stab.
agree. Yeah, but I agree with Winston. You know, answering the questions on point is very important. And perhaps if today you are not sure, firstly, ask for clarifications. Ask the interviewer, uh, paraphrase the question to see whether are you getting the question correct, and then answer it on point. Take your time to answer. You don't have to rush through it, right? You can take a time to think, maybe about 2 3 seconds, and then you answer. That shows that you actually put some thought into your answer. And when you speak, speak slowly, right? And when you speak slowly, and you watch their body language. As you see the interviewer start to twitch, start to fidget, they look like they are trying to get in a word in between what you are trying to say. That's where you know you need to stop a little bit. But if you're telling a story or you're telling an experience and they look very interested, right? Then that's where you can continue a little bit more, and then after end. And then if you sense that you might have stretched a little bit too far, then just apologize and say, I'm so sorry if I given you a long answer to your question. Yep, it's all right to do that, because sometimes you get carried away, but don't keep doing it. All right. But more importantly, I hope these little pointers allow you to think about your own interview practice. And these are actually blind spots because you cannot see yourself speaking. So perhaps as a practice, record yourself. Record yourself audio. If you want to, you can do a video as well and play back, and then you can see how you're actually behaving, what some of the blind spots that you have.
Thank you very much, Gerald, for that. I think hearing from both Winston and Gerald is really about being present in the interview. And it's okay if we make mistakes, because that's where we also learn from it. We reflect on that as well. So I think that's our last question. It's all the time that we have. So thank you very much, Gerald, Winston, for joining me on this live stream. Jay, back to you.
Hi, thank you so much, Ari, Winston, and Gerald. And that's very informative sharing. It's very interesting though, because all of us, or probably all the candidates, are actually thinking if the qualification that they have is enough, or how to make their profile boast to recruiters as well. And I'm pretty sure that you have a lot of questions now, but don't worry, you can still keep in touch with these career coaches. So you just have to go to the website and click on Prepped. The button over on the website, you just have to click on Prep or Get Prepped with Career Advisors, so that you can chat with them one-on-one. And right on the spot, they will give you a reply as well. And I'm really sorry to say that this is all for today. And thank you so much for all the interest that you've shared, your time, and we really appreciate it. And tomorrow we'll be meeting again. Tomorrow we have a last live stream that will be around 2:15 p.m. Hopefully gonna see you there as well. And you all have a great day. Thanks everyone. Thanks to all the speakers as well. And you all have a great day, and bye for now.